What's up, guys? Let's talk about high volume versus high intensity. Which of the two is better for maximizing hypertrophy and muscle strength? Okay, so I want to talk to you guys about this article that recently came out. I was reading the latest issue of Mass. It's a publication by Greg Knuckles, Dr. Mike Zoros, and Eric Helms. So what these guys do is these guys break down, scientific literature or scientific research based on, strength, body composition, and they put it out there so that guys like you and I can understand and put it into our training protocol. So it's really, really good. These guys are very well qualified, and I feel like it's amazing for all of us to apply it into, into real life or into our training. I think it's like a gold mine, I would say. So yeah, and another important factor, guys, when it comes to especially research based on hypertrophy and strength, there are like 101 parameters. So it's always best to go or to look into the most latest form of research. So let's get into the study. There's a study that was done on trained individuals. So basically they looked at the recovery from a session of high volume with low load, 8 sets of 10 at 75% of 1 RM, resting 75 seconds in between sets. Okay, versus low volume, high intensity group of 8 sets of 3 reps at 90% of your 1 RM, resting 3 minutes between sets. And they were looking at what it would do to soreness, markers of recovery, strength recovery, muscle damage, inflammation, and all these other types of biomarkers. Well, what they found was that the high intensity session, or the high volume session, actually caused a lot more damage and inflammation, and it took a longer time to recover when compared to the high intensity session. So basically, the lighter group had more muscle damage. So most of you may be like, since there's more muscle damage, it may equate to, more muscle growth, but that necessarily, may not be true. Does not mean, the more muscle damage, the more the muscle growth. There are some benefits to muscle damage and inflammation in terms of the repair processes. Just completely associating muscle damage to muscle growth is not correct, I would say. Well, that being said, there's a place in your training protocol for both high volume and high intensity. However, Eric Helms did mention, out of all the parameters that you can measure or associate muscle growth, volume is most closely associated to hypertrophy. Now by volume, I don't mean pumping out 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 reps. Okay, now no matter what you do, okay, you will see an improvement in hypertrophy to a certain degree, but you're not going to maximize hypertrophy. And we are talking about what to do to maximize hypertrophy and strength. Am I right? Okay, so let's take an example. So you have various athletes, you have football players, tennis players, sprinters, and what they do is they train to improve functionality, endurance, power, just so that they can maximize performance in their sport, right? Am I right? But you do see an improvement in hypertrophy, right? So that's what I mean to say, guys. And even if you're in the gym or if you just stimulate muscle anyhow whatsoever, there will be an improvement in hypertrophy to a certain degree. So with that being said, like I've seen a bunch of guys in the gym, I was there, believe me, doing just a bunch of like absolute BS, but there is an improvement in hypertrophy to a certain degree, and that will happen, but eventually you will plateau, because you have to know what you're doing to maximize that certain trait or that certain type of function you're looking for, right? Okay, anyway, so there was this study done on trained individuals where they were made to do, I think, about 25 reps per set. So the conclusion was there was an improvement in hypertrophy, but moreover there was a great improvement in endurance. So you have different types of training to work on different attributes. But I would say, if an athlete were to train for endurance, he would not be doing 20, 25, 30, 40 bicep curls with a good amount of load, because at the end of the day, that will fry your joints. And I remember, guys, when I was training for my competitions, I've been there, I've done thousands of reps, just because it felt really, really good. And I've seen guys with all sorts of joint problems and issues, and believe me, it's not a good situation. Okay, anyway, let's not deviate. Let's get back to the study. So by high volume, when I say muscle growth is closely associated to high volume, here volume is the number of reps into sets into load. considering that, the rest intervals are uniform. So that is high volume. That is the total volume that you should consider. Lane Norton, if you guys are not familiar with, he is into bodybuilding, powerlifting, a professional coach, has a PhD, and he's published, a bunch of research. So what he had to say with regards to this study and volume in specific, what he had to say is, you want to progress on the minimum volume that you can make progress on. There are different reasons for this, and the study highlights one of them. Because if you do a session that's so difficult, so muscle damaging, it will negatively impact subsequent sessions and actually may impact overall volume that you can have in a training cycle. So he goes on to give an example where he says, okay, let's say the study had to be performed with 5 sets of 8 at 70% of 1 RM. Okay, these people could have recovered 30 to 40% faster. Well, they could have had more sessions. They could do more weight with more volume over the course of a mesocycle or over the course of several weeks, right? And actually have a greater overall growth response compared to coming in, hammering one session, and then being so wrecked that they can't effectively train for the next week. So that is just one aspect to consider. Another aspect to consider is high volume is relative to an individual. So if you take a beginner, a guy who just comes into the gym, for him high volume could be just one session of 4 sets, taking squats as an example. And him compared to someone who's been training for 20 years, for him high volume could be 4 sessions of squats a week. Each session has about like maybe 3 to 4 sets, so that's equivalent to 16 sessions a week. So it is very, very relative to an individual. It depends on what your training style is, how advanced you are, and the kind of volume dosage that you are required to make progress. A great example would be German volume training, okay, GVT. So, I mean, like I said, right, if high volume would equate to maximizing hypertrophy, so then, like doing 10 sets of 10 or doing maybe whatever high volume in general would, maximize hypertrophy. So what this study said is, there were a group of trained people that did 10 sets of 10, and there were a group of people that did 5 sets of 5. So the people who did 10 sets of 10 were wrecked, like they were not able to recover. It did negatively impact the whole training session, the subsequent sessions, the whole program whatsoever. But the people who did 5 sets of 5 were able to recover. It did not spill into other training sessions, and it was very beneficial to those individuals. So basically, you have to keep in mind that you're not just looking at one training session, but the program as a whole. You do not want to cross the barrier where volume negatively impacts your training session, So that is what it is, guys. So the guys who did 10 sets of 10 were overreaching or overtraining. So, overreaching is something that is done at a very, very advanced level. There's a study done that, that when advanced lifters were trying to break plateaus, what they did was they trained to failure in one microcycle in a whole program. Just one small aspect, one small part of a program, they trained to failure just so they could break plateau. And this is for an advanced lifter. I'm not talking about people like me and you or most of my audience, right? So this is for advanced lifters, guys. And what was also said is apparently overreaching is also done with professional athletes like Olympic lifters and all, just to push boundaries so that they could hit their goals and reach a great number when they're competing on stage. Okay, so that's when overreaching is used, but it can never be done throughout a program, because like in the long run it could slow down recovery, and the overtraining could spill into different sessions and thereby increasing chance of you getting injured. That could happen. This also shows that if you're going to do a really, really damaging session, it needs to be periodized properly, okay, no matter what. It can't be so bad that it consistently negatively impacts subsequent workouts. If you're going to schedule a session like that, it should be followed by a few days of rest, or maybe a session that's relatively easy to get by. So that's why Dr. Mike Zoros, one of his methods of DUP, daily undulating periodization, instead of doing your regular hypertrophy, strength, power, and power is basically you're doing low volume, low load. I think about 30 to 60 of your 1 RM, where you just focus mainly on speed to build that power. So instead of doing that, what he would recommend to do is hypertrophy power and then strength. Because like you said, I mean, if you have a hypertrophy session, it's a more or less a damaging session. It could, it could spill into your strength session, thereby making it not all that effective, right? So if you put a power session in between, it could, could play out as an active rest, because it is, it is not a demanding session as such. So basically, like I said, guys, if you're doing a very, very heavily damaging session, it should be followed by either a few days of rest or maybe a session that's relatively easy to get by, which is the power sessions. But guys, my point is, volume is important for hypertrophy and so is recovery. But you have to periodize appropriately and you have to progress with volume appropriately. And by volume, what I mean to say is, sets into reps into load. I'm not talking about doing 50, 60 reps or 100 reps. I've been there. That's why I'm trying to explain to you guys, volume and intensity both go hand in hand. It's all about how you periodize it, okay? So guys, that is about it. If you guys want more videos like this, I hope this, this explanation did make sense and I did break it down for most of you guys. So thank you guys for watching. Subscribe to Mars. I'll put a link in the description. I get absolutely nothing from it, but there is a fee for subscription I didn't mention. I mean, I don't get anything from it. So, but it's worth it, guys. I mean, I do pay for it. I do enjoy every bit of content and I think it's super informational and helpful for me and for you guys. Took me a while to crack this study, but it did make sense to me. So I hope you guys understand what I'm trying to say. Anyway, see you guys. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and have a great day.